we're going into this next story here about Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Tim Scott. It's just a mixture of sorts. And I don't know if you've seen this poll, but if I were a part of the Biden administration, I would be very concerned if I saw these numbers. This came through from The Hill, which states that Donald Trump is now 7 points ahead of Joe Biden. Not even exaggerating. Make it a little bigger. Yay. Former President Trump leads President Biden by 7-point margin in a new survey shared Friday with The Hill from the Harvard Capps Harris poll. Separately, the poll found that Biden and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis are deadlocked in a tie when those surveyed were asked who they prefer in a head-to-head matchup. Now, I want to come in here and say this. I told you the DNC is not going to allow, Marianne Williamson is not going to allow Marianne Williamson or RFK Jr. to win. But that doesn't mean that they can't still in some way hurt Joe Biden in the general. Right now, RFK Jr., I saw a poll recently. They had him at like 20. I think he's like 20%. There's another poll that has RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson both tied at 11%. There's multiple polls, but in most of the polls that I've seen, RFK Jr. has the most support between him and Marianne. And I said, even if the DNC, which they will not give the nomination to RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., and I point to him more so because he seems to be more the leading more here. RFK Jr. can still hurt Joe Biden in the general because some of the people who want him and do not want Joe Biden, some of those people may decide to vote for Trump. Now, this is something similar that we saw with Bernie Sanders in 2016. It wasn't a lot of people that went this way, but there were some supporters that said when it was between Hillary and Bernie, they were like, I'm all in for Bernie. And then when Bernie lost or they cheated Bernie, they said, fuck it, I'm voting for Donald Trump. That did happen. I know people who did that. So this could still hurt Joe Biden. So for Joe Biden to sit here and to ignore the fact that he does have primary challengers and doesn't want to have a debate, that is not going to help him in the way that I think that he thinks that it would. So Trump is leading by 7 points. The results coupled together point to an apparent strength of Trump in the GOP primary as DeSantis gets set to enter the race as early as next week. Trump had led DeSantis in a number of polls of GOP voters by double digits. DeSantis, by the way, is expected to announce his candidacy tomorrow, apparently on Twitter through a Twitter space with Elon Musk. So I guess it's a good thing I don't stream on Wednesday nights, but is supposed to happen tomorrow. I saw the announcement on Twitter from Elon Musk. I don't know why DeSantis is entering this race. I don't know why Tim Scott is entering this race. I'm going to be very clear. I'm going to have some things to say about Tim Scott. We're going to get to him in just a second because I got some things to say. But I will say this. The polls show that the majority of Republican voters want Donald Trump instead of Ron DeSantis. So I don't know what Ron DeSantis is really trying to do. But remember what Tucker Carlson said in reference to the media, that Fox News, Rupert Murdoch said, we're going to be going for DeSantis this time around. So maybe Ron DeSantis believes that because he has the donors and he's going to have the media, Fox News media on his side, maybe he will have a chance after all. Let's go on. The survey found 47% of respondents said they would vote for Trump if the 2024 election was today, and Trump and Biden were the political parties' respective candidates. 47% backed Biden, while 13% said they did not know or were unsure. 42% of respondents picked Biden, and an equal percentage picked DeSantis in that matchup. If you're the sitting incumbent, how do you tie with Ron DeSantis? You're the incumbent president. This is how bad Joe Biden is. This does not happen. When have you seen this happen? Boy, I tell you. Hypothetical 2024 matchup between Trump and Biden. Here we go. You see this? There it is. 40% Biden, 47% Trump. You can't make this up. If Joe Biden's sitting back thinking that he has this in the bag, he is sadly mistaken. And now, Tim Scott, who's a Republican representative, now he has decided to throw his hat in the ring. Now, I went to college in South Carolina. Tim Scott is not appealing, in my opinion. I don't think he's exciting. He gives me Jeb Bush vibes. He's kind of boring, but you can see so for yourself. Here's his announcement, and I don't know where he thinks he's going to get in this race, but here we go.
We cannot have innocent people at risk, police officers getting ambushed and attacked, and seniors locked in their homes from the time the sun goes down until the sun comes up.
First mistake he makes is he assumes that the police officers are innocent people. First mistakes he makes. And he's wishy-washy, like when the Black Lives Matter protests were happening, at one point he said he's been stopped by police for driving while black. And then at another point he said, well, you just got to follow the law and you won't get stopped. He's all over the place. All over the place. All these people were totally on board with someone like a Donald Trump when Donald Trump was the president, including Tim Scott. Now Tim Scott wants to jump in and run against Donald Trump. Tim Scott knows damn well he does not have any chance running against Donald Trump. He knows that. You mean to tell you guys really think that he could win? Some people don't even know who he is. Come on. Jeb Bush vibes. Low energy.
Joe Biden and the radical left are attacking every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb. And that's why I'm announcing today.
Before he gets to that, I want you to hear what he just said. I think this is important because he makes it about himself. Listen to this.
Every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back a little bit more.
The left are attacking every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb.
It's all about what helped him. Joe Biden and the radical left, they kill me how they try to make it seem like Joe Biden is radical. Joe Biden is not radical. Joe Biden is basically Republican light. He's not a communist. He's not a socialist. He's not a progressive. Stop giving him credit where it is not deserved. Okay? Stop it. Stop it. I wish Joe Biden was a radical. He's not. But you notice what Tim Scott said there? He said they are basically breaking apart every piece of the ladder that helped me. Me. It's all about what helped me. Not about what helps and uplifts the people. It's about what helped him. This is another vanity project.
And that's why I'm announcing today that I'm running for president of the United States of America. Thank you.
Tim Scott reminds me, first of all, I don't even believe these people are real. This is North Charleston, South Carolina. I wonder if they pay these people to stand behind him. They position certain people behind them, right? They position certain people behind them on purpose, right? That's where the cameras are going to be. Tim Scott reminds me of one of those dudes at the party that's you ever go to a party and then there's people who are there who are just the life of the party. They're more social people, that kind of thing. And then there's the one dude that kind of stands off in the corner and you could tell he's not really social, but he's there because his roommate probably drug him out and said, come to this party with me. I don't want to go alone. So he goes there, doesn't really want to chat with people, kind of stares off in the corner. But after he gets a couple of drinks in him, he's like, yeah, people clap. Yeah, I'm going to run for president of the United States. That's what he reminds me of. He's the guy in the corner at the party. Get him a couple of drinks, get him a couple shots, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah, clap. And then tomorrow, people forget his name. Everyone just goes back to class. And he'll come up to them in class and say, man, that party was awesome last night. They're like, who? Who are you? Get off of me. Who are you?
Thank you. You see, they're attacking our American values, our schools, our economy, and our security. But not on my watch. Not on my watch. That won't work. I cannot stand by while this is done to America. She's done too much for me.
Here we go with the me again. It's all about what has worked for Tim. What has helped Tim and his life. You cannot believe this.
Our nation, our values, and our people are strong, but our president is weak.
Well, he's right about the president being weak part, but he's not strong either. That's what's hilarious to me. I'm like, do you really think that guy would win? You really think Tim Scott would win? Give me a break. Give me a break. Oh, dear God. So where is the Biden campaign heading in all of this? You got Trump leading 7 points in the poll. You got Tim Scott jumping into the race. Nikki Haley had already announced. And tomorrow, Ron DeSantis is expected to announce that he is jumping into this race as well. Well, one of the things that they're doing now are the ad campaigns, and they're targeting certain states. And I want you to pay attention to the states that they're targeting. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. I think this is important for you guys to see.
The president's campaign just released its first strategy memo, and it is quite revealing where the ad buys are. It's boasting a number of viable pathways to 270 electoral votes. Team Biden's dropping a seven-figure early ad buy in blue wall swing states, including Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. You can see the other early ad buy states in here: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida among them. That campaign is highlighting Wisconsin, where abortion rights just swung the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court left. Democrats think that's a sign that the social and culture issues will help Biden in some of these perennial swing states.
That part right there. If you look at some of the states, Florida, Wisconsin, Georgia, these are states that have already been hit by stricter abortion laws. But notice what she said. They're trying to tap into the social and the cultural issues in order to help Joe Biden win, because they can't do it on his record and his performance. That's sad. That's sad. So you tap into those states where abortion rights have been restricted, and then what? Are you going to promise to codify Roe v. Wade? Didn't he say he couldn't do that? After they promised to do that when people came out for the midterms, then after the midterms, he's like, yep, we're not going to be able to do that. Well, what are you going to promise to those people? This is what they're running on, the social and the cultural issues. This is how they get people every time.
Count more than the economy. But finally, one editorial in the New York Post pointing out Biden is a fool to ignore RFK Jr. At least 3 different polls have him up around 20%, John. And obviously that is not to be ignored this far out still from the presidential election.
Well, yeah, that's true. But, you know, as we pointed out in one of our panels, Biden still got 62%, which ain't half bad.
This is true.
If you're running for the nomination. But a lot to chew over between now and next January, and then from January on through the primary season, and then into November. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It might be fun for you guys. It won't be fun for me. Hold on to that 62% because I believe that's going to change. I don't think it's going to stay that way. And you have to hear another way that the media is trying to run cover for Joe Biden's, I don't want to even say his age, but his cognitive decline. And they won't use those words. They're using the word age because then it makes you feel bad if you say he's too old, like that kind of thing, right? So I want you to listen to what they said here on MSNBC. Now, this guy, he is just basically a puppet for the New York Times. Now, this is, you see the Mehdi Hassan show in the background, but he works at the New York Times. Listen to what he's going to say about the people that have criticism about Joe Biden's age. Listen to this.
As we start the second hour, we want to flip the script on how President Biden's re-election campaign is perceived. The common wisdom in much of the news media is that Biden might struggle, maybe definitely is struggling with parts of the electorate in 2024 because of how voters view his age. But in a recent piece in the New York Times, I argue there's a chicken and egg aspect to this coverage. Now, let me say up front that a candidate's age and competency are always fair game in politics. Even Biden conceded earlier this month that he took a hard look at his age as he contemplated whether to seek re-election.
One of the things that people are going to find out, they're going to see a race, and they're going to judge whether or not I have it or don't have it. I respect them taking a hard look at it. I take a hard look at it as well. I took a hard look at it before I decided to run. And I feel good. I feel excited about the prospects.
But there are other truths that must be considered. As I wrote in the Times, headlines
Told you.
and polls don't just measure and reflect public sentiment, they also influence public sentiment. The persistence of a theme elevates and validates that theme. It's true that if he's reelected, Biden would be the oldest president we've ever had. But he is already the oldest president we've already had the first time he was elected. So what has changed? I'd argue that the biggest change wasn't the simple passage of time, but the decision of some Republican leaders to focus like a laser on Biden's age as the factor weighing against him, and then how the media responded to that heightened focus.
BS. What changed was that people saw how Joe Biden was performing publicly at press conferences, during interviews, listening to Joe Biden stumble over words, call people incorrect names, go to shake the hand of someone as the prime minister who is not the prime minister of that country. That's what changed. It doesn't even matter if Republicans were trying to use that smear. It was Joe Biden's behavior and his actions that changed the game for people. It's interesting how people like him can come to the defense of Joe Biden's age. But when Bernie Sanders was running in 2020, MSNBC, CNN were trying to say, oh, Bernie may be too old. They couldn't make those excuses for Bernie Sanders when he was trying to run. But as I'm sitting up here calling this out, Bernie Sanders should have called this shit out. That's right. I'm saying it. As I'm sitting up here telling you how they sit up here and make excuses for Joe Biden's age because he supports the status quo. He supports the military industrial complex. He doesn't want to give you Medicare for all. He backs the establishment. And they would not do this same defense for Bernie Sanders. In fact, they used his age as a weapon against him. As I'm sitting here telling you this, Bernie Sanders should be sitting up here telling you this exact same thing.
Editorial decisions can be influenced by campaigns, and coverage can influence voters as much as inform those voters. From my piece in the Times, the idea that voters are worried about Biden's age and capacity has been repeated so often that it no longer requires any proof beyond polling that reflects what respondents have consumed. Reports that they're worried about Biden's age and capacity.
Again, it goes back to Biden's behavior. Not your whack article in the New York Times, not the data that's been presented by other people as well. It is strictly his behavior. It's the way he has performed.
Breathless headlines have created a sense that worry about the president's age is common and common sense, when in fact, at least in part, it is fueled by political manipulation and by media complicity. So as the 2024 election cycle begins in earnest, maybe we, in the news media, should let the voters decide what's most important to them and stop deciding for the voters. As we start.
But then you wouldn't be mainstream media if you did that. See, that's the thing. We need to stop deciding for the voters. That's what he just said, right? He's mainstream media, but that's what you do. Your job is to control the narrative. Your job is to make that decision for the voters, because mainstream media doesn't even believe that we can make our own informed decisions. Mainstream media doesn't believe that. That's why they got to smear people who run on progressive issues. That's why they got to smear people anyone who's looking to run third or independent party. That's why they have to smear those people, because they don't believe that we can make our own decisions for ourselves. And that is a problem. So miss me with all of that, because here you come years later, many elections later, and now you say, well, maybe mainstream media, we shouldn't be doing this. Get out of here. Get out of here. After you've sat up there all these years, when we could have had decent people in some of these positions, not just the presidency, but in some of these positions in general, and your network, MSNBC, CNN, all you guys sat up there and you smeared those people. Get out of here. Now, there's another clip that I want to show you with that same gentleman, where they're actually talking about the idea of a third party, the fact that a third party could take away from the votes from the Democratic Party. Now, there's this idea, I don't know if you've heard of this, but there are talks of getting Joe Manchin to run sort of as like a third party spoiler or a sense or whatever, like Joe Manchin, right? They're trying to get him to run as more of the centrist figure in the race. The same guy, shout out to Case Study QB. Listen to what they say about third party.
Brad, the New York Times reports that the centrist group No Labels is considering recruiting a third-party candidate in 2024, even discussing names like Joe Manchin.
That's the name of the group there. It's called No Labels, eyes a third-party run in 2024. What they're basically looking to do is to just stop and prevent another Trump win at all costs. And so the people that are part of that organization, they have found a way to come together in reference to let's just defeat Trump. Don't worry about the issues. You ain't got to really run on any type of policies. The goal we're all coming together for is to just defeat Trump. And there are talks of trying to get Joe Manchin to run in that spot.
The report says that Democrats are especially alarmed by the development. Do you think a third-party candidate in 2004 would do something like Jill Stein and Gary Johnson did in 2016 and like siphon votes away from the Democratic candidate?
That's a damn lie. So he's bringing up Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. I told you, this guy is just a puppet for the New York Times. He's just spewing propaganda. Jill Stein didn't take votes away from Hillary Clinton. I want to be very clear. The people who voted for Hillary Clinton wanted to vote for Hillary Clinton. Jill Stein did not. Gary Johnson, same thing. They did not pull votes away from these people. I've had this very conversation with Jill Stein. And even if you do the math, and we've talked about this, even if you give all of Jill Stein's votes to Hillary Clinton still loses because she doesn't win the Electoral College. But here they go, these talking points. Like, this guy is a paid liar. Paid liar.
No. I mean, go for it. God bless No Labels. If they want to try for it, go for it. I think that, again, we know what's at stake. We know that Trump and DeSantis and all these guys, to Paula's point, they're inflaming and using wedge issues to ginny up their base. They're not even trying to persuade independent voters. The reason why Joe Biden won is because he is the best candidate. Still today, this is the reason why he is our candidate.
Wrong. Joe Biden did not win because he was the best candidate. Joe Biden won because Obama convinced other people to drop out of the race. And because Elizabeth Warren, the snake, decided to stay in the race for Super Tuesday, knowing damn well she had no chance of winning at that point in time. Bernie Sanders just wrote about this in his most recent book, by the way. That's why Joe Biden won. Paid liars, paid propagandists. You mean to tell me how you go from Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada? He didn't win any of those states. Then all of a sudden he wins South Carolina. That's it. That's it. He's the best candidate. He was not the best candidate. He won because he was selected to win. And that's how it works. Obama pick up the phone, make a couple calls, tell people to drop out, making moves behind the scenes. There is no democracy. Another paid propagandist.
To actually reach voters across the aisle. Trump, DeSantis, all these guys are at 37%. That's going to be their number. The question is whether Joe Biden, the largest electorate in every election cycle, it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's people that don't vote. And that's the percentage of the electorate that I am most worried about, right? In the Obama White House, in the lead up to the midterms and the re-election, we did something special. We created something called the American Jobs Act. Why did we do that? To Paola's point, because we had to paint a vision in the second term. Obama's second term, the bear is loose. Second term Obama, we had to start painting a vision of here are the things that we're going to do in this second term. That is what the Joe Biden White House and this Joe Biden campaign is going to need to start to do. But he's the best messenger. I mean, it's not even a question. I mean, you look, polling right now is very early, but there is not a single person in America right now, he's our sitting president, that has a chance to beat. There's no other way to put it. This is a fascist takeover of the Republic.
Is he correct? I just showed you. He said there's not a sitting American that has a chance to beat Joe Biden. I just told you the poll that shows that Donald Trump is 7 points ahead of Joe Biden.
Republican Party. This is not your mom and dad's or your grandparents' Republican Party. This is a fight for the very soul, not to sound like Joe Biden, but for the very soul of our democracy. And
what soul and what democracy? You see, he's from the Obama administration. You see, they all just repeat the same talking points. He don't even know what he's talking about. I'm not going to repeat Joe Biden, but we got to fight for the soul of our democracy. What does that mean? Has anybody asked that question? Like when Joe Biden said that, the soul of our, what do you mean by that? If I was interviewing that gentleman, I would have asked him, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the soul of our democracy? Could you explain that a little bit? Go a little bit deeper? Wouldn't explain it. Don't even know what it means. They're just all repeating the same talking points. Propaganda 101, repeat the same message by as many people as possible.
The only person that's going to win is someone who is, one, in office as we speak, and two, can reach communities in, as Paola said, in every single state. And it's not just white suburban, ex-urban moms. We're talking about Asian American voters in Nevada. We're talking about Latino voters in Florida and in Texas and in Georgia. And Joe Biden, during that...
Who did he leave out? You guys pay attention to this. By the way, pay close attention to who he leaves out, right? Look at this. They give their self away. They make my job easy. Look.
Every single state. And it's not just white suburban, ex-urban moms.
It's not just white suburban, ex-urban moms. Why does he say that? Because that is the demographic that Joe Biden won in states like Georgia that helped him win. But listen who he leaves out. Listen to this.
We're talking about Asian American voters in Nevada. We're talking
Asian American voters in Nevada.
About Latino voters in Florida. And in
Latino voters in Florida. Which Latino voters, by the way? Because, Democrats, they tend to just group Latinos as like one group, we got to get the Latinos. Which Latinos are you referring to? Are you referring to Cuban Americans? Puerto Rican Americans? Mexican Americans? Which group are you referring to? You see how they just lump them all together and think they all feel the same politically? Okay. So he said Asian Americans, not just talking about white suburban moms, Asian voters in Nevada, Latinos in Florida,
Texas and in Georgia. And Joe Biden, during that
in Texas and in Georgia. Okay. Who did he leave out, guys? Who he leave out? He didn't say anything about people who are working class, and he didn't even mention African American voters. And you know damn well the Democratic Party, as a Democrat candidate, you can't win without the African American vote. He didn't even mention us. He didn't mention me. What the hell is that? When I tell you to leave the Democratic Party, I'm not telling you to go to the Republican Party. I'm telling you leave the whole damn system altogether. They're not giving you anything. He don't even remember you. He didn't remember you. Kill Gorgie's right. Black folks. Say what now? You can't even win without us. He ain't thinking about us though. And you got the black host right there. Okay.
Democratic primary, who was the candidate that could galvanize communities of color and young people to vote for him? It was Joe Biden. It was.
Notice how he says, who was the candidate that can galvanize communities of color to come out and vote? It's communities of color. He says that so he don't have to mention black people. You see how this works? Boy, I tell you.
It wasn't Cory Booker. It wasn't Kamala Harris. It wasn't Mayor Pete. It was our guy, Joe Biden. So look, I will say this. For the people that are saying he's too old, he's this, he's that, and he's the other, I will point you to Bernie Sanders and how he ignited young people. And I'll point you to Dark Brandon 2.0. Because young people.
Bernie Sanders is not experiencing cognitive decline. Bernie Sanders remembers people's names.
Don't care about your age. Young people care about the issues that you're fighting for. And that's where we're going to win.
They're doing that on purpose, using age instead of saying what I told you, cognitive decline. But I think there's other issues as well. There is this issue also with New Hampshire. Now, remember, they changed the schedule in reference to the primary voting states. South Carolina is going to be first instead of New Hampshire. And I told you New Hampshire voters were not happy about that. That's my neighbor to the north, Sup. They are not happy about that. And they are pushing back on that. And they're planning to still hold their primary first anyway. And what that means is that Joe Biden's name, it's possible, may not be on that ballot. Now, Case Study QB, you've been killing it with the clips. Listen to how things could work out for Joe Biden in New Hampshire. This is important.
For 50 years, the nomination process has started in Iowa and New Hampshire. This year, the DNC voted to adopt a schedule suggested by President Biden, making South Carolina the first contest on February 3rd and moving New Hampshire to February 6th, the same day as Nevada. The idea being to better reflect the demographics of the national electorate and presumably to give President Biden an advantage.
It has nothing to do with the demographics, and it has everything to do with putting the state first, that Joe Biden actually, it changed the race for him in 2020. It changed the game for him. That is what this is about. If you have him start in a state like New Hampshire that he could possibly lose again, it will make him look bad as an incumbent. That's what this is about.
So far, New Hampshire hasn't agreed and is insisting on going first. In fact, their state law requires that they go 7 days before any other primary. Remember now, in 2020, Biden lost both the Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primary. In New Hampshire, he finished a distant 5th.
Now, you tell me how he became president of the United States. You tell me. You see this? This is just a reminder.
And his candidacy looked dead on arrival for a while. Then House Whip Jim Clyburn endorsed Biden before the South Carolina vote, which he then won, and several moderate candidates dropped out through their support behind Biden. That's how he won the nomination. This week, when CNN's Chris Wallace asked Jim Clyburn if the move was stacking the deck for Biden, Clyburn said this.
I don't think you're stacking the deck. I think you're avoiding embarrassment. And that.
Isn't that terrible? Listen, I don't think they're stacking the deck. He's like, I think they're avoiding embarrassment. If Joe Biden was doing a good job, you wouldn't have to avoid being embarrassed. Clyburn. Jeez.
Is what he is attempting to avoid here. And I would expect anybody to do the same.
So if New Hampshire still goes first, what's going to happen? Joining me now is Jim Garrity, contributing columnist for the Washington Post, senior political correspondent for the National Review, where he writes the daily Morning Jolt newsletter. He also recently wrote this piece for the Post: "The primaries haven't started and Biden has a problem, New Hampshire." Jim, thanks for being here. So what are the options that the Biden campaign faces in New Hampshire? What can they do?
Well, the current status seems to be that they're sticking with the proposal that that Biden basically, I don't want to say forced on the DNC, but he had strongly suggested it, and the DNC generally goes along with what a current president wants to do, and that they were going to say, well, we're not going to recognize the New Hampshire Democratic primary. In the past, we've seen the national party committees do things like only count half a delegate for each delegate from any rogue state that is holding a primary.
Half a delegate from a rogue state holding a primary. Guys, they already rigging shit now. Listen to the rhetoric.
Before the date that the national committee had permitted. If he does that, if Biden does say we're forfeiting it, we're not competing, we don't recognize it, then the odds of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or I suppose Marianne Williamson winning or finishing with some really high percentage increases dramatically.
So what is it? Is it an embarrassment only? Is it an embarrassment only issue, or is there real concern that if RFK Jr., because I think he'd be the more likely, given those independently minded Granite State voters, if he should win New Hampshire, then all of a sudden there's a cloud of confusion over every other race, or is it just a temporary, egg on the face of the Biden campaign?
Look, I think there's about a high 90-some% chance that Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee in 2024, presuming he stays healthy, presuming he doesn't, God forbid, have something terrible happen.
Because the DNC has already selected him to do so. That's why he can say with such high probability, 90-something% chance, because they have already chosen.
But if you do lose, first of all, the odds of Biden losing the Iowa caucuses, which are currently scheduled to go fourth, is greater than zero, because the Iowa folks Democrats are not thrilled about it. Now, this is the case because they couldn't count the votes back in the 2020 Democratic Iowa caucus. I think there was a broad consensus that Iowa should not go first. But I think New Hampshire Democrats feel like they're being unfairly punished for that their primary ran without a hitch back in 2020.
Yep.
And so wait a second, why are we getting shoved back to fourth place or we're behind South Carolina? And they so strongly suspect, with good reason, that this is mostly about they're being punished for not having voted for Joe Biden. And just with that fascinating Jim Clyburn quote you just said, this is all about trying to avoid embarrassment. Michael, with friends like this, who needs enemies? This is all about trying to avoid.
There's one other aspect of.
Yeah.
There's another.
New Hampshire, long story short, said, "Hold my beer." And I know I've said this before, but New Hampshire's motto is "Live free or die." Like, they don't really like a lot of regulation being put on them. So this is like a no for them. They don't like this. Like, no, you're not coming in here changing things and telling us what to do. Oh, dear.
Interesting aspect about this, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you need the acquiescence of those New Hampshire Republicans in terms of redoing the date for the New Hampshire primary, right? And Governor Sununu is, thus far, he doesn't want to play ball with this, probably because he hopes for the embarrassment that we're raising the prospect of.
Yeah, and I'd also note that, Chris Sununu is making noises about running for president on the Republican side. But this is one of those rare areas where, New Hampshire Democrats and New Hampshire Republicans both believe that their state is terrific and it should always go first in the presidential nominating process. So you can probably find 48 other states that would say, no, we should go first. But it's one of those things where this works to New Hampshire Republicans' advantage. It creates this headache for Democrats. New Hampshire Democrats, elected officials, they're not saying, well, this is going to cost Biden New Hampshire in the general election. but it's another headache.
Right.
It's another complication.
Right.
It doesn't make it any easier, and it is kind of a purpley state that is not a sure thing in the Democratic.
It is definitely not a sure thing. And I could tell you, I don't know, maybe I should reach out to should I reach out to Governor Sununu and ask him for an interview, ask him how he feels about this? It is not a for sure thing. New Hampshire is a mixed bag. But how do you feel if there were the election, the general today, or who do you think would win in 2024 if it was between Trump and Biden once again? Let's see those poll results. All right, Eric, I'm ready whenever you are. Wiggity, wiggity. Who will win if the nominees are Trump and Biden? Well, good God. 761 votes. Uh-oh, the votes are changing. I guess some people are just now voting. 83% said Trump, 3% said Biden, and 14% said not sure. Power to the not sure people. What's happening? What's up? What is up?